Engineering in early America was nothing like what you think of today. It's not high technology, it isn't making cell phones. It's simple tools, making the tools that you need every day to do your job. Engineering here on the frontier was a complete reset. It was going back to very primitive techniques compared to something you're going to see in New York or Philadelphia or Boston or Charleston. Today we'll be making a Drawknife, a very simple woodworking tool for shaping wood, something that you need every day here on the frontier. The Drawknife has a long horizontal blade, two tangs that come off of either side for handles so that you can shave wood by pulling it toward you. Brandon and Simeon are going to be working on the forge, and I'll be working on the handles.
We got our fire going, and Simeon out here, he's going to give us some help on this project because we're going to do a technique called a double strike.
And what a double strike is a two-person job. You have two hammers going at the same time. On something like this, today and even historically, most blacksmith shops had at least one person to double strike. What that did was that allowed the other person to hold the bigger hammer with two hands and get a lot more metal moving at one time. It made the process quicker. We've chosen some old files to use, and we're going to try that. I wanted to show you this Drawknife. My grandpa died in 1981 when I was about 6 years old, and I found this in my dad's wood shop, and I said, "What is this?" And he showed me what it was for, and I don't know if you can see it, but I could feel my grandpa's thumbprints in these handles. You know, when somebody says, "How long have you been doing this?" I say, "Since about 6, because I remember using grandpa's Drawknife. So dad put a 2x6 up in the vise, and I whittled the soup out of it.
That's an amazing story. I love history sticking with you like that.
Yeah, yep.
So for this double strike, what method are you wanting to use?
Well, there's two. The first method is the double striker would hit in the center of the anvil regardless of where I hit. And the second one is the double striker hits wherever the first striker is hitting, and that's the one I prefer.
All right, got it.
What I'm gonna do is I'm gonna use the hot cut. We're gonna come in and cut that. We need to make a little bit more handle material, so I'm gonna cut that, and that's gonna be the new handle we'll draw out. This is a fantastic little forge, especially like on a frontier setting like this, but what I've found is, this being a new forge that I'm not working on, when I try to put the file in there, it's not getting far enough into the fire, and I've got to knock out part of this mud backing that they've got here so I can stick the file back further through. So I asked Brandon if this was okay for this to happen, and
I got just the tool for you.
Oh, look at that. Yeah, sure enough. Let's give it a shot here. This is a big improvement. I can already see I can stick the work through further and get the heat concentrated where I want it. So this is really going to work out well. We've got our one side of the tang drawn out and finished. I've got to let that normalize, which is basically an air cool, because if I were to quench that, this file has enough carbon in it, it would turn it brittle, and that would be very susceptible to breaking, so we're waiting for it to soften up. Brandon and I have got the tangs drawn out. I've got the center part, the blade part, the angle feathered out to where it needs to be. We've got it forged to finish now, and what's next is Jon and Brandon will work their magic, and then we'll have a completed Drawknife to show you.
We have our rough forged Drawknife here that Simeon has done for us. It's only air cooled though, so it's still very hard and very brittle, but we want to get it to a point to where we can use a file and shape it and do that final finishing. To do that though, we have to soften it, and to soften it, it's called annealing. The process is we're going to heat this up cherry red, and we're going to stick it into a bucket of ashes that have already been pre-warmed. They will slowly cool this down, and that's what will soften it. It'll take overnight. Once we get that done, then we'll have to re-harden it by heating it up and quenching it in oil, and then a little tempering heat on the bottom will bring that soften up just a little bit to give it strength.
I'm going to be working on the handles for this draw knife today, and we've got a piece of ash here that we're going to turn the handles out of. The handles on this are going to be fairly short, about 2 or 2.5 inches long, and you can see from this draw knife here, they need to be kind of pear-shaped, a little wider at the base than they will be close to the neck of the draw knife. But our handles are going to be a good bit shorter. We'll get both of the handles out of this one stick. Once the shapes are in there, we'll cut this off and do a little hand shaping. The wood here is a challenge. We're using a very dried piece of ash. That makes it harder to work. If it was green ash, it'd be very easy to do this turning, but then it'll dry and shrink and probably crack and break. So we have to do the harder turning on the already dried wood, and using this pole lathe, it's a very primitive lathe, so it takes a long time to get the skills to make a nice smooth turn. Using this lathe is definitely a challenge compared to using a modern lathe because of this oscillating back and forth motion. You only want to cut when you're on the downstroke, so you only want to kind of push in when your foot is going down. If you're pushing in too hard the whole time, like you would with a modern lathe, well, it stops the piece and ruins your rhythm. And rhythm is really important when you're doing this sort of lathe work. It's all the more really important to have your tools very, very sharp, or else you're working really hard at a job like this. I'm really getting close on this second one. You kind of get that first one, you get the feel for the shape, and then you just echo that shape in the second one. It doesn't really matter whether they're perfectly exactly the same on either side. You're just using this tool. You're not worried about it being exactly symmetrical.
So we have our final filing all done. It's all nice and sharp and smooth. The next step before we harden it is to fit the handles, and Jon already has the handles made here. He's going to drill them out, then we're going to heat these up and heat form them right in there so that the hole is perfect to the tang. Makes a really good solid fit. So we heated the tangs up for the handles because we wanted to do that before we harden it. And that's the step we're at now, the final hardening. We have our oil here already, so we're going to stick this in the fire and we're going to get it up to 1500 degrees, and that's the optimum temperature for this hard steel. And then we're going to quench it in the oil, and that'll give a nice hard steel.
It's great to hold in my hands a tool that we've made here on the homestead and we'll be able to use on the homestead for future projects. Special thank you to Brandon here who worked on this project. Also, Simeon, England. Thank you for traveling all this way, bringing this project to the table. If you've enjoyed this Engineering America episode, tell us about it in the comments section. And if you have an idea for a project, we'd love to hear it. Thanks for watching.